What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to review the Vanatoo Transparent Zero Plus powered bookshelf speakers. Now, I consider this a lifestyle product, and let me tell you how I ended up with these. So, Thomas and Stereo reviewed the original Transparent Zero a few years ago, and I was like, whoa, those look kind of cool, kind of unique, but I don't review power speakers, so I don't care. And then I saw they came out with this plus version, but I was like, you know what? I don't usually review powered speakers, so I don't care. And then Vanatoo actually shot me an email and they're like, hey, do you want to review the Transparent Zero Plus? And I was like, I don't review powered speakers. I don't really care. And the gentleman in the email, he was just like, hey, no problem, no hard feelings. I appreciate the candid response. He's like, mind if I ask why? Um, and I gave him my opinion on why, and we kind of just got to talking, and he seemed to me to be like a dude who cared about his product, who was an audiophile himself, and not just some random company making some affordable powered speaker, and that kind of spoke to me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put some respect on this company's name. I'm going to accept this review sample, and I'm going to tell you guys about it. So that's really what happened. I kind of thought, because I don't know if you guys see on Amazon, there's a lot of like these kind of companies coming out of nowhere, making powered speakers and stuff and selling them for around this price. And when I see companies like that, I'm just like, you're just someone trying to make a buck. But from talking to this company, it seemed like, no, these are passionate people. This is like a company of people who love music, they love audio, they love the gear. And I thought that was super cool. So now, you guys know I've reviewed a ton of bookshelf speakers, amplifiers, subwoofers, but powered speakers are generally something I stay away from just because they're kind of a pain in the butt. They're not super relevant to the way I listen, but a while back, I reviewed the SVS Prime Wireless Pro, and I really liked that powered speaker. It was good. It was 900 bucks. The only thing I didn't like about it, I was like, at 900 bucks for the pair, it's not for everyone. Not everyone can afford that. And I always thought it'd be cool if I could find an alternative for somewhere, closer to half the price. And boom, that's where these come in. These are $449 a pair or 400 if you go for the B stock. Now, I did you guys a favor and I told Vanatoo, hey, I want the B stock. The reason I asked for the B stock, I wanted to see what kind of condition they'd be in so I could tell you guys that are, more into saving money and would want to save that 50 bucks and get the B stock. Honestly, guys, they were pretty much like brand new. There were like a few minor scratches underneath where they'd sit on a desk, as you would expect from any speaker that is secondhand or previously been used. Anytime you put a speaker down on a surface, that bottom section will get a few scratches. Aside from that, they were in pristine condition. So if you've been thinking about buying these and wondering if the B stock is worth it, I think it's worth saving 50 bucks. But let's talk about the speaker. Why do I think this is cool? What usage situation do I recommend it for? And why do I think it's worth at least 400 or 450 bucks? Because at the end of the day, that's quite a bit of money. And there are affordable speakers and amplifiers you can buy instead, right? So ultimately, this is a very small speaker. I think its design usage is two things, right? I don't think it's for a dedicated listening room like I have down here. Now, I did use them down here just to get a feel for their tonal signature, but then I took them upstairs where I use them a lot in my TV rig, my gaming rig. I have a 77-inch OLED upstairs. You'll see pictures on the screen behind me rotating from where I have it upstairs. I play video games up there. I watch Netflix. I watch Crunchyroll. I watch movies up there. It's more of a casual space. And unfortunately, that living room cannot accommodate a proper sound system. Because of the alcove, there's nowhere to put a subwoofer. There's nowhere to put big speakers. I have to run small speakers on my media console, and I'm usually using the Monacoustic Supermon Mini and a Hagel H190. That's usually what I'm using up there, so I'm pretty spoiled. That's, what is that, like $5,000 worth a year, right? So I took that stuff down. I set up the Transparent Zero Pluses, and the first thing that surprised me was it wasn't like a downgrade necessarily. Now, look, in a music-only system in a dedicated space, look, the Hagel H190, the Supermon Mini, it's going to perform on another level. But when watching TV shows, movies, playing video games, the difference wasn't that big. In a TV setting, clarity is really the primary focus, and these have a good amount of clarity. Let me tell you about their tone. Well, first, let's do this. Let's put the main specs on screen so you guys can check that out. I'm going to tell you about some specs and standout features I think are cool. I'll tell you how I use these, what they sound like, how they compare to some other speakers in and around this price. Then we'll wrap up the video. So we got a small compact speaker. They are sealed with passive radiators, and those passive radiators do add a considerable amount of bass for the size. These are very full sounding from about 100 hertz on up. They do have a subwoofer output. Love to see that. I love seeing subwoofer outputs. It breaks my heart when I see a good product and they forget to include a subwoofer output. Like, who doesn't like bass? Everyone likes bass. We all want good, strong, powerful bass. Now here's the crazy part. A lot of my usage with these, I didn't use a subwoofer. From 100 hertz on up, they were quite full sounding in my alcove. Now, speakers in an alcove will have a boosted bass response, so that did help. But I thought they sounded very good in that usage case. The sound, sorry, before we get into the sound, let me tell you about some of the other features. You can swap them left to right. The powered unit is going to be by default set to be your right speaker, but you can go through the settings and make it such that the powered speaker is now your left speaker. So you can switch that. That was a big question I got with the SVS Prime Wireless Pros, if that right speaker can become the left speaker, the one that's powered and controlled. And with the SVS Prime Wireless Pros, the answer was no, you could not do that. And I know that was a deal breaker for some of you guys. So with this one, you can do that. The speakers connect to a non-proprietary cable. Love to see that. Guys, they just use an Ethernet cable. That made me so happy because I was able to go on Amazon and buy a nice nylon braided Ethernet cable by Ugreen for like $8 and spruce things up a little bit. And if you need a longer cable or a shorter cable, they're super cheap. Again, even like the Ugreen ones that are like nice and nylon wrapped, they're like $8, $9. So I'm so happy they didn't use a proprietary umbilical. What else? You have optical inputs, you have an analog input. It is by way of a 3.5 millimeter to RCA adapter, but I don't think that's problematic at all. You can control volume, treble, and bass from the unit. It is easier to use the included remote control. However, there are two DSP modes. One that rolls off the bass a little bit sooner and one that doesn't. I chose the flat option. There is a limiter that you can choose to disable or keep enabled if you want. If you listen at lower volumes, you could probably disable it and enjoy a little bit of a fuller sound. If you like to really push the volume, I suggest you leave the limiter in place. There are some sleep functions you can also program as well. And overall, I think it's got all the right features for the size. It doesn't have HDMI ARC, but if that's important to you and you know, because maybe your TV doesn't have analog outputs, I made a video, guys, that, you know, HDMI ARC extractors are only $20. They work very well. I made a video all about it. If you want to connect these to your TV and you don't have analog out and you can only do optical, and maybe that's annoying because you don't want to have to use two remote controls, I'll link my HDMI extractor video in the in the description below. Other than that, though, you can absolutely connect them using your TV's optical. You just would not be able to control the volume using your TV's remote control. You would then have to use the Vanatoo Transparent Zero Plus's remote control to adjust the volume. But using analog output will allow you to use the TV's remote, or using my HDMI extractor, ARC extractor idea will also allow you to use the TV's remote control. So treble, mostly clarity focused, mostly neutral, just a little bit on the forward side. Fairly refined for this price point. It wasn't sharp, it wasn't fatiguing, it wasn't harsh on the ears, it wasn't dull sounding. It was actually pretty good treble for this price. Moving down to the mid-range, it's a bit of a V curve. The mid-range is just a little bit recessed, not so much so that dialogue becomes problematic in anything. In fact, dialogue was very clear when playing video games, when watching movies, TV shows, or anime, so that was really helpful. Lastly, bass. Again, bass was fairly impressive for the size. 100 hertz on up sounded very full. The mid range sounded full. Mid bass frequency sounded full. I like to see that. You have tone controls, you can crank them up. I did try to crank up the bass with the tone controls. It definitely did give a fuller sound, but I felt it was a little bit at the expense of mid range quality and openness, so I chose to keep the bass and treble flat. I thought that's how the speaker sounded best. So this is my suggestion. If you have a living room like mine where you can't really fit a proper sound system, you can only really do like a sound bar or like a really small amp and a really small set of speakers on top of a media console, a speaker like this isn't a bad idea. Of course, something like the SVS Prime Wireless Pro is also a good idea. If you've got twice the budget, those are a little bit bigger and a little bit better in just about every way. And I mean, they're double the price. They should be, right? But if you liked everything I had to say about that $900 a pair Prime Wireless Pro powered speaker, but that was just a little bit outside of the budget, the Vanatoo Transparent Zero Plus is probably going to be my go-to recommendation for anyone who's looking for a casual setup like that. They also have Bluetooth, so you can have them set up in the living room for your TV rig, and you can still play music to them. You have a lot of options with these. I think they're very user friendly. And of course, look, if you wanted to use them for dedicated computer speakers, they're absolutely small enough for that. They got this cute little angle. You got a lot of options now. I'm sure you've noticed on the screen behind me already, but just in case you didn't, I'll mention it. The orientation can be changed. You can have these set up so that the tweeter's on the bottom or on the top. You can have these set up so that they're angled or they're not angled. Note, if you have them set up to be not angled, the tweeter will always be on the top. And if you have them set up to be angled, wait, if they're not angled, sorry, let me say that again. If they're not angled, right? In other words, you have them set up so that they're straight, right? There's no like, lean back. You can have the tweeter on the top or on the bottom. However, if you have them set up to be leaned back like they are here, the tweeter will always be on the top. Reason obviously is the passive radiators right here, and you do not want to set the speakers down on the passive radiator. If you don't like the aesthetics of this handle, it can be removed. It's not just a handle; it also acts as a stand of sorts when you choose to use the speakers in orientation where they are perfectly vertical. In my living room, I chose to use the speakers with a little bit of lean back. That helps project the sound up, make it sound bigger, more expansive. It was a massive upgrade compared to using TV sound, for example. I played some songs in that room as well using the Bluetooth function. I thought it sounded just fine. So look, I've told you what they sound like. I've taken you through some of the features. Yes, they do come with grills and pads and things like that. Let's get into some comparisons. I think that'll help you guys out, and then we'll wrap up the video. But so far, what I'm saying is this. If you've got a little desktop setup or a living room like mine that's compromised and you can't have a dedicated sound system, you want something small and dedicated to give you just better sound, I think this is a really good option at a really attractive price point. Let's talk about how they compare to just more affordable speakers and very affordable amplifiers around the same price. So let's see, what's a good affordable speaker? Let's say something like the Sony SSCS5. I don't know if they quite go on sale for $100 anymore. Let's say they're like 149 bucks. Let's say you get like a cheap Class D amp for like another 149 bucks. You're at like, or maybe 200. You're at like 350, maybe 400, maybe slightly less, but you're coming in around the same price. I'd say that's probably going to give you a little bit more of a neutral sound overall with a cleaner mid-range. That Sony SSCS5 is a decent speaker, but you're going to end up with a much larger speaker, and you're going to have a separate amplifier. You're not going to have Bluetooth functionality built in unless that amp has that. You most likely will not have a subwoofer output. Most of those smaller, inexpensive Class D amps don't have a subwoofer output. The internal DAC, maybe it's good, maybe it's not, maybe it'll have optical, maybe it won't. It's kind of hard to say. Overall, though, I would say honestly, if you don't mind having separates, as long as you find like a decent cheap amp, maybe something like the Auralic A50 Plus, that's 200 bucks. And then say you get the Sonys for like 149. That's a pretty good setup. I do think overall that would sound bigger and fuller than these little guys, but the system would be bigger, physically as well. So no surprise there. Let's see if we could shrink things down a little bit, find something really small that still separates around the same money, right? Because ultimately the question is there value in going with the transparent Zero Plus, right? Of course, there's absolutely convenience. You don't have to worry about a separate amplifier, separate cables, the aesthetics of that. It's just two speakers. It's going to look really good. So let's just look. Let's go for my favorite cheap tiny speakers. So the RSL CG3M. Those are 200. I think they're $110 a piece. So that makes them what, 220 for the pair. Let's pair them with RSL's own amp, the IA255. I think that's like another 120 bucks. So all in, we're around like 360, right? So we're within $40 of a B stock pair of these, or about 90 bucks compared to a new pair. But you know, you're going to need some cables and stuff like that because it is separates, and that's going to kind of make it about the same price. The RSL CG3M will have better mid-range and treble compared to the Vanatoo Transparent Zero when those RSLs are paired with RSL's own amp. However, the Vanatoo Transparent Zeros will take a pretty good edge in terms of bass. The fullness overall, bass quantity and quality is going to be a win for the Transparent Zero Plus. They're just going to have a fuller sound overall. I love that RSL CG3M bookshelf speaker, but it does not have any bass, whereas the Transparent Zero Plus at least can muster some bass, and is in fact still a little bit smaller, I believe. So that's a situation where you get a lot of the same features. That RSL amp does have a sub output. Those CG3M speakers are quite small. You'd spend roughly the same once you account for cables and such. So the biggest difference is just, like I said, the RSLs will give you a little bit better mid-range and treble. The Vanatoo Transparent Zero Plus will give you a lot better bass. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's like tiny that I can compare. Because of course, like larger bookshelf speakers are going to sound bigger. That doesn't make sense, right? You'd be looking at something like this because you want something small, right? Most small speakers aren't that good, straight up. Like the PSB P3s, I think those are 300 bucks. Even with like a $500 amp, I'd rather have the Vanatoo Transparent Zero Pluses. Um, ELAC BS41s, those are like 170 bucks. Let's pair those with like an Auralic A50 Plus again, because that amp's, 200 bucks. Actually, we can't. The ELAC BS41s are hard to drive. The Auralic A50 can't drive them. We're going to have to pair it with something stronger. I don't know, but let's say just some random $200 like Chinese Class D amp that's got like 100 watts a channel, because that's what the ELAC BS41 needs. So we'd be in it like high 300s, almost 400. Once you account for cables, you're going to be in the same price category. I would take the Transparent Zero Plus for sure over the ELAC BS41s. Reason is this: even with a really good amp, even if we paired those ELAC BS41s with like $1,000 amp, remember what I said, smaller speakers usually don't sound that great. The ELAC BS41 treble is not as good as the Vanatoo Transparent Zero Pluses. The mid-range is fairly congested as well on the ELAC BS41 compared to these Vanatoos. The ELAC BS41 is a larger speaker. It's still quite small, but it is much larger than the Vanatoo, so it is going to have quite a bit more bass, so I will give it that, but its bass is sloppy. It doesn't sound very good. Overall, the ELAC BS41 paired with any amp is not something I would choose. I would still choose the Vanatoo Transparent Zero Pluses over those. So what I'm saying is this: for about 400 bucks or less, if we're between an inexpensive Class D amp and an inexpensive tiny speaker compared to the Vanatoo Transparent Zero Plus, the Vanatoo Transparent Zero Plus is going to win pretty much every time. The only time I'm going to say it's going to start to be even, and it's just a choice, is going to be the RSL CG3M with its IA255 amplifier, because the mids and highs are really good on that speaker, but then the bass is better on the Vanatoo. So like that's just becoming personal choice at that point. With the Sony example, those were so much larger, it didn't make sense. The ELACs don't stack up. The PSB P3s don't stack up. So what does that mean at the end of the day? This is a good speaker at a fair price, and it fits a niche. And I think for the people who need a speaker in that niche, I think it's going to be a good buy. look, I've told you everything I think I want to tell you about the Vanatoo Transparent Zero Plus. If you've got any questions, this YouTube channel does have a free Discord. Hop in there, ask your questions. If you want to ask in the comments below, go ahead, ask in the comments below. For this video, that's all I got. Until next time, later.